Education in Pakistan Outlines. Introduction. 1. Facts about the education in Pakistan. Literacy rate in Pakistan. Budgetary share of education. Pakistan's place in South Asia. 2. Education in Pakistan at primary level. Article 25A of the Constitution. Cost of education in private schools. Enrollment of students. 3. Higher education being provided in Pakistan. The quality of education. A. Outdated curriculum. B. Faculty and vocational training. Unemployment. Population explosion. Supply not demanded. Internship. A business tactic. Comparison with the neighbor. Failure of HEC. Failure at planning. Failure at implementation. 4. The changes that are required. Spending like South Korea. Delivering the right to education. Understand the Japanese system of education. Recognizing globalized world and education. Questioning HEC. Making private organizations liable. Converting jobless into entrepreneurs. Conclusion. Introduction. Education is perhaps one of the most important ingredients to a happy, successful, and constructive life. In fact, having access to a good education during childhood and your early adulthood can make a real difference in your later life. However, not all education systems are equally good. It is saddening to see how miserable and uninterested teachers, or even entirely corrupted systems, do nothing but close the minds of young children. No matter if you're a teacher seeking to reignite your passion for teaching or a student struggling with subjects that are far from reality. In the ideal case, education and educators inspire pupils and students to open and expand their minds. Even more importantly, a good education system skillfully prepares the young children for life. Yet, math, biology, and physics alone won't prepare you for the challenges of life. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Author, Nelson Mandela. Facts about the education in Pakistan. Literacy rate in Pakistan. Pakistan's economic survey revealed that in the year 2017 to 18 overall literacy rate, people of age 15 and above able to read and write, was 58%. The literacy rate has been static for 4 consecutive years, 2014 to 18, but it diminished in the year 2013 from 60% to 58% in the year 2014. Gender-based breakup showed that 70% of the male population whereas 48% of the female population was literate. The province-wise breakup indicated that Punjab had the top literacy ratio of 61% in Sindh. The ratio was 60%. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa had a literacy rate of 53% and Balochistan came out in the last with a literacy rate of 44%. Facts about the education in Pakistan. Budgetary share of education. These figures are alarming as under the United Nations, an intergovernmental organization tasked to maintain international peace and security, Millennium Development Goals, criteria presented in the year 2008 goals among which education is one. Pakistan was required to increase its literacy rate to 88% by the year 2015. The target that was to be met in the year 2015 was not accomplished even in the previous year 2018. The reason for failing to achieve the goal of a literate nation is the unwillingness of the government to spend on the education sector. In the year 2018 annual budget of 5.932 trillion rupees was announced. Education affairs and services were provided with 97.42 billion rupees only, in the budget estimates of 2018 to 19. the government had earmarked 10.12 billion for pre-primary and primary education affairs. 12.365 billion rupees was allocated for secondary education affairs and services, and 71.824 billion rupees was earmarked for tertiary education affairs and services. 1. Facts about the education in Pakistan. Pakistan's place in South Asia. Pakistan's spending on education as a percentage of gross domestic product (GDP), a monetary measures of the market value of all the final goods and services produced in a period, remained among the lowest in the South Asian region, which was 2.2% of GDP in the year 2017 as compared to 2.3% of GDP in the year 2016. India has a literacy rate of 74.04% and is spending 3.71% of its GDP on education. Similarly, the literacy rate in Bangladesh has risen remarkably over the past decade to all-time high of 72.76% in the year 2016. 2. Education in Pakistan at primary level. Article 25A of the Constitution. Article 25A of the Constitution of Pakistan obligates the state to provide free and compulsory quality education to children of the age group 5 to 16 years. Unfortunately, this right is not provided to the children of the state. On June 28, 2018, while hearing the appeal of private schools of KPK, Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan remarked, according to the Constitution, the state was obligated to provide free education to all children in the country. Alternatively, the government should pay fees of poor families, children in private schools. The jury was of the view that the two previous governments had failed to give preference to the education sector. Failure of government paved the way for the private institutions to provide education, but at an unbearable cost for a layman. 3. Education in Pakistan at primary level. Cost of education in private schools. It was revealed by the counsel, Mr. Shahid Hamid of Beacon House School System (BSS), a well-known group of private schools. During a court proceeding, the BSS had paid a huge tax of 764 rupees million in the year 2017. Prudently thinking, what would have been the profit if such a huge amount is paid in tax? Probably, the same question might have been striking in the mind of Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan as His Majesty, on December 13, 2018 inquired, have these schools bought uranium mines or gold mines? The period of summer vacation is a period of ease. Private institutions, they get paid for doing nothing. The logic behind the schools remaining close and yet the parents need to pay the fee is not understandable. On December 13, 2018, the Supreme Court ordered a 20% decrease in fees charged by private schools and ordered them to return half the fees they had charged for summer vacations. The order applies to private schools across the country whose fees are more than Rs 5,000. Such costs have discouraged parents to enroll their children in school, colleges, and universities. Education in Pakistan at primary level, enrollment of students. A report, Pakistan Education Statistics 2016-17, which was launched on July 5, 2018 by the Academy of Educational Planning and Management, EPAM, a subsidiary of the Federal Education Ministry, stated that out of the total 51.53 million children between the age of 5 and 16, 22.84 million, 44%, were out of school. What benefit these children will provide to themselves and to the state in the upcoming 20 years. How we will be able to manage our bureaucracy, judiciary, military and parliament when our upcoming generation will be under the eclipse of illiteracy. These questions need to be addressed by the incumbent government for the sake of Pakistan. 3.1. Quality of education, outdated curriculum. Higher education is recognized today as a capital investment and is of paramount importance for economic and social development. The current generation, who is to become the strength of the state's economic muscle, does not possess the skill, confidence, and knowledge. The first reason is that an outdated curriculum does not help in producing quality graduates and postgraduates. Producing quality graduates and postgraduates is a long-drawn procedure. It begins with the quantification of various types of graduates and postgraduates to be produced every year. Para 8. 3.1 Quality of education, faculty and vocational training. The second factor is the deteriorated quality of faculty in the public sector universities. Ensuring the availability of qualified and experienced faculty and enriching education with real-life experience. However, the lack of this linkage creates most problems. In most of the public sector universities, the curriculum has not changed in decades, and the same goes true for the faculty. A large number of teachers use stale notes, which they have prepared most probably when they were students. The third reason is the lack of vocational training facilities, and declining standards also adversely impact the work of manufacturing industries. Para 9. Unemployment, population explosion. Every year, hundreds and thousands of graduates and postgraduates are produced who add only to the list of unemployed youth. The unemployment rate is increasing, firstly because of population explosion, a sudden large increase in the size of a population, which had led to migrations in search of better living standards. The high rate of migrations from the rural areas to the urban, as well as from urban, Texel, to urban, district, migrations have made big cities like Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi facilities and employments, thus encouraged the population to migrate to these cities. But now the situation has changed, only the fittest survive. Para 10. Unemployment, supply of students not demanded. Secondly, the students are mostly unaware of their capabilities and interests, which empower the marketing department of colleges and universities to decide their future profession by convincing them. No one knows the number of doctors, engines, accountants, and IT professionals to be produced every year. As a result, at one specific point there is an acute shortage of a specific type of discipline, but sometimes there is a glut of graduates of the same seeking employment. This is due to the lack of interaction between the educational institutions and the business community. This lack of interaction does not impact the universities but to the qualified graduates and postgraduates who need jobs. Para 11. Unemployment, internship, a business tactic. Thirdly, universities are neither supporting nor aim to support job seekers. The only favor that they offer a student is an internship. Corporations do offer internships to the students, but those who have been part of the internship program of a certain organization are hardly offered a job, and most candidates fail to secure a job on the plea of insufficient experience in the market. Internships are basically a tactic to get the work done free of cost or at a very low cost. Para 12. Comparison with a neighbor. According to QS Ranking 2019, World University Rankings, an annual publication of university rankings by Quack, Corelli Simons, published on June 6, 2018, only 7 universities of Pakistan at 397th rank, whereas India's 9 universities are listed in top 500 universities. The best university of India at 162nd rank. Pakistan and India got independence on the same day, but their success in education speaks a volume. Para 13. Failures of HEC. Failure at planning. The Higher Education Commission HEC, an independent, autonomous, and statutory, required, permitted or enacted by statute, institution of primary funding, overseeing, regulating, and accrediting the higher education in the country for the year 2014 to 15, after a lapse of 3 years. The information generated by HEC through its publications serves as vital statistics on higher education, which forms the basis for federal and provincial educational planning. The sole body of maintaining and managing the education of the state has failed to realize the importance of proverb procrastination is the thief of time, and its credibility seems to be a question now. Para 14. HEC had initiated local and international Ph.D. programs to increase the number of scholars to fulfill the criteria of Ph.D. staff members and improve the quality of education. In September 2018, the Ph.D. Doctors Association, PDA, staged a protest against HEC for what they believe its failure to provide them with regular jobs. Ph.D. scholars were still jobless after a huge investment in the program, such as 1.5 million rupees per scholar within 4 years, local program, and 3 to 4 million rupees per scholar, international program. The public universities are encouraging visiting, contract, and daily pay labor policy with very low wage, Rs 12,000 to 30,000 per month. As many as 720 Ph.D. scholars are claimed to be jobless during the said year. Para 15. 1. The change that are required. Spending like South Korea. The incumbent government should change its approach to education. An increase in the budgetary share at least 7% of GDP is imperative, 3.5% each for primary and higher education. South Korea has a literacy rate of 97.9%. The Ministry of Education of South Korea has a budget of US $29 billion, 6 times what it was in 1990. This accounts for about 20% of the central government expenditure. The Korean government spends 3.4% of GDP on formal schooling. South Korea, being scarce in natural resources, realized that human development is the only option to achieve economic progress. This realization became the driving force behind their educational amelioration. 2. Delivering the right to education. With the increased budget in hand, the government should provide the constitutional right of Article 25A, free education to the children of age 5 to 16. And ensure that children of such age are not out of school. The poor are reluctant, to spend on the education of their children because of the cost of education. Japan introduced universal education for all by 1868. All parents were ordered to send their school-age children to schools. This age group cannot be seen roaming around in streets, markets, parks, and workplaces. Police were deployed to arrest any such children along with their parents and send them to prisons. 3. Understanding the Japanese system of education. Japanese school children lead the world in numerical and literacy skills. What mattered was the quality of lessons given to Japanese children instead of the number of lessons. Japanese school children do not take any exams until they reach grade 4 at the age of 10. Just small tests are given to them. This is done to develop their characters, manners, and behaviors to interact with society. Similarly, the government of Pakistan should understand that providing education and increasing literacy rate is not sufficient. Qualitative education must be provided. 4. The changes that are required. 1. The qualitative education at all levels is mandatory. Qualitative education as per the need of the time is required. As the world is changing, so are the challenges changing. Thus, we need to revisit the curriculum followed by vocational and technical training to keep our generation abreast of this globalized world. In South Korea, the curriculum has undergone major revisions 7 times since 1954. The most recent update, known as the 7th curriculum, aims to prepare students for the knowledge-based globalized 21st century. 2. Questioning HEC. HEC has failed in providing the data which was to become the basis of educational planning. The government should inquire about the reasons for this extraordinary delay and should inquire about the remaining annual performance reports from the year 2016 to 2018. HEC plan to enhance the quality of higher education by producing more PhDs but failed at the stage of implementation. The government should ensure that HEC fulfills all its commitments, as such blunders are intolerable and unjustifiable from this supreme organization. 3. Making private organizations liable. All private schools, colleges, and universities to maintain records of the students who have left the said institutions to know where their students are and how are they managing their lived livelihood. The government should also make the universities secure their first job. If the universities fail to accommodate their students, the government must charge a penalty as an opportunity cost of student remaining unemployment. This will reduce the burden of unemployment to some extent from the government and bring the money minting institutions under scrutiny, critical observation or examination. 4. Converting jobless into entrepreneurs. The second option that the government should consider is to make the universities to promote entrepreneurship. Funds should be allocated to the universities under the supervision of HEC, and the graduates and postgraduates should be provided with the money for the startup of business, which would be payable within a span of 3 to 5 years. This would particularly help the students to get experienced in their field and to some extent, will help in changing the mentality of education for jobs and will make the youth self-reliant, reliant on one's own powers and resources rather than those of others. Conclusion. Summing up, before results, there are plans and their implementation, and long before the plans there is the policy direction, and long before the policy direction there are visible indications, and in case of education, our failure is visibly indicated. The government should address this issue without further delay. Firstly, the government should increase the share of education in its annual budget. This essay is contained on 29-28 words.